and according to that which has been spent and what they spend from their wealth. Ibn Abbas says that means the bridal gift and spending on their wives, because they must do so. Now, the pious women, what Ibn Abbas says the pious women refers to is the righteous women who are good to their husbands. Secondly, those who do righteous deeds and good deeds, as said by Ibn al-Mubarak. And qanitat, according to Ibn Abbas, means that they obey Allah with regard to their husbands and do as they are told. Those that preserve matters in the unseen, meaning their spouses, what is unsaid or unseen of their spouses. They preserve that which occurs in the absence of other people regarding their spouses, meaning the wealth, and they preserve themselves and protect themselves only for the sake of their spouses. So, it is by the preservation of Allah that He preserves them, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Ata, Muqatil, and it's related from Al-Mubarak, from Sufyan, who said, yes, the preservation is from Allah, referring to the women. And He would preserve them in that regard in what they preserved. And that also it's referring to the preservation of their mahr, that they should always be given mahr. And it's compulsory to maintain them. So, those who preserve in the unseen the thing which they've been preserved with by the command of Allah, Allah shall preserve them in their obedience to Him. Close quote. So this statement then is, again, this ayah is one of the stumbling blocks for feminazis or feminists, stumbling blocks for a weak man who doesn't want to look after his wife, or a deadbeat father. It's a stumbling block for them. Because you have men that like to fall back into the role and say, yes, we're all equal. And then the woman's got to go out and work like a horse. And then she comes home. He's like, yes, what's for dinner? She just came in the door. Some people like that type of thing because they're weak. But then at the same point, the woman has to accept that there are rules. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had called them governors, because men are in charge of what? They have to increase their intellect. And what this increase is referring to is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran refers to prophets exclusively in one ayah as rijal, men. Prophets are not referred to as in the sense of nas. The expression used about them is rijal. All the prophets have been men. Now there are some latter day scholars like Imam Al-Qurtubi and others, rahimahumullah, that say, well, there could have been female prophets. But there's no text for that, and this is the first 3 generations. Rijal, men. So men have been chosen to be prophets, to go out and earn wealth regarding the inheritance, to divide up the war treasure. It's compulsory on them Jum'ah. It's not compulsory on women Jum'ah. They're not required to go to Jum'ah. The Farad Salah and Jama'ah. Now there's a difference of opinion between the scholars, but with Hanbalis, the Farad Salah and Jama'ah is wajib. It's not for women. So if they don't appear at Fajr or Isha, then it's no harm upon them. Right? If they don't pray Salah and Jama'ah at home, it's not harmful for them. If the men gather around, the woman says, well, I'll do it later. I'm tired right now, or it's a hassle, or I'll do this right now. I'm going to go take care of something and come back. It's no harm upon her because it's not required for her. But men in the school of Imam Ahmed, it is. And it's a thing that can be considered a kabira if you intentionally go outside of it, because it's very serious. Khilafa, establishing khilafa. Imara, establishing governance, governing. Right? Jihad, establishing jihad. Right? The role of talaq unless otherwise noted. So if a woman is given the right of talaq by the man, then it's hers. But in general, the right of talaq rests in the hand of the man. So all these responsibilities, it's expected that we as men have to do them. Governing and all these different, we have to do them. And the women are expected for their governing affairs. But men are expected, men, you must do this. Do this, do that, do this, do that, do this. And that's why if you look in the Quran and the Hadith, here's something interesting. Do you notice that women are never punished for the misdeeds of their husbands when you look in the hadith. Women are never given a double punishment for fleeing from the battlefield in the hadith. Women are never given a double punishment for... There's so many different things. How many times is a woman mentioned being punished in the hadith? How many times? And look at what she's being punished for when Allah metes out his punishment. What? You as men. How many times is it mentioned about you turning your back on the battlefield in jihad? But we'll be killed, of course, but that's what you want, isn't it? Victory from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to go back to him. Victory or death, isn't that what you want? How many times has it been mentioned? Failing to be a judge and to act by the judgments that you give. How many times has it been mentioned? Failing to safeguard your children. You get a double punishment because you don't safeguard your children. You get a double punishment because you don't safeguard your wife. You get a double punishment because you don't safeguard your daughters. You get a double punishment because you don't give inheritance to your maintenance to your wives and such. You get a double punishment because you cheat in your business dealings. You get a double punishment because of this and that. No, I think it's the last thing you would wish to be a man with the amount of responsibility. I don't know who's been selling that to you, but I think it's the last thing that any one of the female species would desire to be a man, because I think you've been sold the wrong product. Because to be a man is just excessive weight. I mean, the first ayat, the middle portion of Surah Al-Baqarah was all what men have to do. Not only do we have to maintain the women, we have to pay them for breastfeeding. Then we have to maintain them, give them the meher, pay them for the breastfeeding, then pay them for additional expenditures. They have to have a winter set of clothes, a spring set of clothes, and all these other things. The Shafi'is, they have 3 sets. Some of them, so okay, this is winter, the autumn, and the summer set. Can you imagine if a wife was in charge? Yes, you have to give a man a winter set, a summer. A man wouldn't know what to do with all these clothes. He might burn them by accident because he doesn't know what to do with all those clothes. A man can back to back wear the same jalabiyah without noticing sometimes for a week, until another man brings it to his attention. You know, you've been wearing this jalabiyah for the past week, day in and day out, but it's clean, isn't it? It's clean, isn't it? And what's the test of cleanliness? Smell it. Smell it. If it doesn't smell, it's clean. So all of these judgments that people have to look at, men have to be men, and women have to be women. And the men will bear a double punishment for when they fail in their responsibilities. And women will receive a double punishment in what? If they fail to advise their husband or the male members of their family when they start to go off the track. If they fail to advise them when they are disobeying Allah. When they fail to do this, then they can be punished. But up and until such time comes, most of the meat is on the back of the man. Might sound negative, but it's true. So if you're a guy, you have to swallow it, move on, take the pill, and accept that this responsibility is on you. And it's a heavy one. Look at the next passage that Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah mentions. He says, quote, "And so the Exalted One has said, further when he discusses these matters, and this matter is a deep one indeed, when he discusses the preservation and talking about those who you fear disobedience from them. Now this means that number one, you know for a surety that disobedience has resulted and is resulting, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas. And number two, that there are signs coming forward showing you that disobedience is coming. Ibn Qutaybah has said that the word nushuz in the ayah means hatred shown by the wife for the husband. And rebellion. And so Allah says, so admonish them, meaning remind them with goodness, so that you might soften their hearts. As said by Al-Hasan, Al-Basri, who said, you should admonish the woman by his tongue. He should admonish the woman with his tongue. And then try to advise. And if she disobeys in that, then he abandons sleeping in the same bed. Now, there's a difference of opinion regarding sleeping in a different bed, what that intends in this particular ayah. One statement is that it can mean leaving sexual intercourse, as stated by Sa'id ibn Jubair, Ibn Abi Talha, Al-Awfi, from Ibn Abbas, and also Muqatil. Secondly, abandoning speaking to them, but not leaving sexual intercourse because of the possibility of reconciliation. As mentioned by Abu Dhaha from Ibn Abbas and Khusif from Ikrimah, and this has also been mentioned by As-Sudai and Sufyan al-Thawri. Thirdly, that it is the statement or talking while going to sleep. And this is narrated from Ibn Abbas and Al-Hasan al-Basri and Ikrimah. So the meaning is, say to them in the beds, I don't want to talk. Or, fourthly, it could be referring to abandoning the bed altogether and not sleeping with them. And this has been narrated from Al-Hasan al-Basri, Al-Sha'bi, Mujahid, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, Muqsim, Qatada. Ibn Abbas has said regarding this, so abandon sleeping in the same bed, and if they accept that, then the matter is resolved. And if not, then Allah has given permission in this regard to give a striking that is light and doesn't leave marks. A jama'ah from the people of knowledge have said, the ayah is in a specific order. There is preaching first at the time of fear of disobedience and rebellion and hatred. Then there is abandoning of the marital bed at the time where the disobedience appears. And then there is a striking at the time of repetitive appearance. Now, it is not permissible that any striking be done at the beginning of disobedience. Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la has said, and this is a statement of Imam Ahmad, Imam Shafi'i has said, at the beginning of disobedience it is permitted. Close quote. Now, there's an important point. When you look in the books of fiqh, when you come under this ayah in the books of fiqh, this ayah and others like it that have to do with meting out any type of judgment are generally under the books of court judgments. So you find that it's the qadis, the imam of the age, and others that deliver these type of strikes. So when you talk about when people are flogged for drunkenness, when people are flogged for fornication, when people are flogged for rebelliousness and disobedience, when people are flogged because they refuse to provide for their wives, all of these types of issues come about because when these issues come about and there has to be a legal judgment and ruling and punishment given to them, that legal judgment and punishment is handed down by the chief qadi, unless that qadi or that judge or that marja disseminates authority to a particular, or disseminates authority to the people of a particular land, or gives the ruling on a particular man in a particular land to disseminate that justice at home. But most times, more often than not, it's the marja and the authority who delivers that. So the same thing as when someone has to be whipped for drunkenness or whatever else, it's where someone's whipped for that. And a man who's guilty of nushuz, which for his side would be refusing to provide for his wife or what have you, he's flogged as well. But this ayah, there's another ayah that we'll come to later that mentions the nushuz of men. But right now we're talking about the nushuz of women in particular. So this rebellion and these other matters, the woman, when she receives the punishment for that, and this is what happens. Now, the question then comes. In Sahih Al-Jami', when a woman came and her face was bruised and marked to the Prophet ﷺ from her husband, he granted that divorce. That's in the Sahih. That's in Sahih Al-Jami' by Imam Al-Suyuti. So a woman came to him badly marked up, and that divorce was granted. So, men going 2 rounds with their wife is not what's been legislated in this ayah. You want to practice your uppercut? You do so on a heavy bag at home. You don't do so on your wife. Now the question then comes, because there's another question. What if a man does read this ayah and he goes to town on his wife? He's swinging away and connecting with every blow, and he does her serious bodily harm, breaks bones, draws blood. Is that sufficient reason for divorce? What they're calling domestic violence. Is that grounds for the dissolving of a marriage by a marja? For the Hanafi scholars, no. For the Hanafi scholars, no. Hanafi scholars do not see that as reasonable grounds for the dissolving of a marriage, because they will see it as signs of a greater underlying issue. Because a sign of a man doing that is a sign of a deeper disease that is inside of the marriage that they need to investigate and find out more about. Why did he do this? Why did he do this? Or because he has a violent temper, or because he was abused when he was younger, or because they tried to dig and find out why this is. For the Hanbali scholars and some of the other ulama, no, that would be valid reason to dissolve a marriage. Because they would say no. Because if that's been proven, they would say, well, her life is in danger. And if her life is in danger, we don't want to risk the possibility that a woman could be killed. Because whether it's in a fit of rage or cold sober, it's still murder. We simply cannot risk that. So this is why it's been very difficult, and it's not the fault of the scholars, because people have abused this law, where sometimes people have roughed people up, and they've been wrong, and they've gone and tried to get the matter dissolved. There's a case in Muslim sister for 15 years. Went through all different types of changes. But what happened is her husband was very shrewd in being able to mangle and to reclassify and to break down things to make it seem as if, oh, she injured herself. And she also suffered from epilepsy. So he was able to put it across and say, well, it's because of epilepsy. She's fallen down. We had an argument, and then she had an epileptic fit every time. It's like, well, and then people began to put pieces together. Well, why is it every time you have a discussion and she has an epileptic fit, the bruises and the damage is on the same part of the body? And he started putting together the pieces and everything. And eventually, because of other extenuating circumstances, the marriage was dissolved. But because those scholars were trying to look at something deeper under there, whereas because they asked me to come in and they said, well, could you advise us in this regard because the case is rather extreme. I said, does she believe her life is in danger? Well, yeah, she believes her life is in danger. Does she have reason to believe that when she goes back into the house that she's at sufficient risk? Yes, then the marriage should be dissolved. And they said, subhanAllah, we didn't bring you in here to say this or to do that. Because there's a difference of opinion about this regard. And when you saw the person come in, you could see that she was clearly vulnerable and shaky and everything else. But they're trying to get to the bottom of, can this be resolved? Because you don't want to loosen that which Allah has binded without sufficient right, because you will be asked. So it's an important point that needs to be recognized, that there is a difference of opinion about this. The best thing to do is to consult with local scholars about this particular point. and to try to understand what exactly is going on and what the matter is. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم واستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين. So we end on Ayah 34. We have to read the rest of Ayah 34 next week. But what I wanted you to understand is that just like with everything else, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers it completely. This issue regarding marriage and divorce and these other matters is not something light. That's why I tell you, before you go into a marriage, sit down, and if you don't write down your own points, you have your wali put it forward, or you do whatever else. The man, he should put forward what he expects. People should go into a marriage knowing very clearly what they expect of one another, and not assume that the other side, they'll just sort of join in. They might not, because they might not know. Or they might have expectations from you that you don't have of them. Or they might have understandings of you that you don't have of them. Or they may expect something of you, of some mold, that maybe is totally different to what you have in mind. Don't go into it blind. Don't put the blindfold on and tie it off and then go in, because that's a foolish thing to do.